Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time today to join us on this webinar, where I'll be talking to you about why verification of secondary dose calculation needs to go beyond traditional point-based MU verification. And we'll also be looking at how 3D secondary dose verification in DoseCHECK is essential to identify errors that traditional methods fail to detect. So before I start, let me just introduce myself. My name is Yamini. I'm a medical physicist with Sun Nuclear, and I'm glad to be joining you today to present this webinar on DoseCHECK. So before I begin, let's just go through a few webinar logistics. This presentation is being recorded. A link to the recorded webinar will be sent to all registrants and made available on our website at sunnuclear.com. Please enter questions using the questions chat window on your GoToWebinar chat window that you see on your right. And we will allow some time for question and answer at the end of the webinar. However, if we do run out of time, we'll make sure to get back to you at the after the webinar with answers to the questions that you have had posed. So moving on to the webinar itself. So SunCheck is a single QA platform which basically incorporates all aspects of patient QA into one single workflow using one single application. And we'll see later on how DoseCHECK forms a part of SunCheck Patient. So within SunCheck itself, you do also have the ability to perform and record all machine QA related tasks using our SunCheck Machine application. So let me just start off by giving you a larger overview of what SunCheck is all about. So as most of you are aware, most hospitals do have what we call as an electronic medical record system to manage all their patient medical records. Then most radiation oncology departments have a separate OIS or oncology information system or record and verify system, which they use to manage records of treatments which are very specific to the radiation oncology department. So what SunCheck is able to do, it is able to offer a single quality management solution for radiotherapy QA. And this would include both machine and patient QA. So most importantly, it is vendor neutral and it does allow you to perform QA independent of any vendor. So our intention is to integrate any of the CT SIMs, any of the treatment planning systems in your clinic, any combination of treatment planning systems, Linux. So if you've got Varian, Electron, Tomotherapy, Halcyon, Linux, these can also be integrated within SunCheck, as well as HDR afterloaders are also supported within the SunCheck platform. So within the machine QA module, our intention is to allow you to get rid of all the Excel spreadsheets, any binders that you have that you may be using to store QA records, as well as, we want you to be able to integrate all the different QA databases that you may be using for daily, monthly, as well as annual QA, and have all the data centralized in one location, which would be SunCheck Machine. So within SunCheck Machine, we do also integrate within several of our QA devices, and this would include primarily our daily QA3 device, as well as the IC profiler. So SunCheck will help standardize quality management for all patient and machines, regardless of vendor or modality, a solution which would be very similar to what an electronic medical record system or a OER system is able to offer. So within the SunCheck platform or umbrella, we have a SunCheck machine, which allows you to perform and record your daily, monthly, and annual QA results. And we do also have a comprehensive inbuilt TG142 template that you can use as well, or customize based on your clinical QA requirements. And we do also provide you the option to perform imaging VMAT, MLC QA as well, easily by integrating, all your images acquired using your EPIT, KV, or your MV imager, and automating the tasks, QA tasks involving these images into SunCheck machine. So SunCheck patient itself is divided into 3 different modules, each which performs a different function in your patient clinical workflow. So plan check is where you would do your physics and dosimetric plan checks. DoseCHECK, which is which we'll be talking about in more detail today, is used for 3D secondary dose verification of your patient treatment plan, and co-fraction would be used for pre-treatment QA as well as in vivo patient QA. So moving on to DoseCHECK, which we'll be covering in a little bit more detail now. So before I do that, I would just like to highlight, AAPM Task Group 219 report, which was published quite recently, actually, in 2021. And this report actually, aimed to provide guidelines on calculation-based dose as well as MU verification for IMRT. So the report is intended to apply is intended to be applied as well to verification of MU for other IMRT-based deliveries, such as static gantry IMRT, VMAT, CyberKnife, as well as tomotherapy. So it does touch on several important topics. Among them, it does discuss the limitations of dose and MU verification software programs. It talks about how dose and MU verification programs can complement measurements for IMRT QA, as well as how to perform acceptance and commissioning of such programs as well. So let's look at the limitations of dose and MU verification softwares. So traditionally, most of these softwares only provide single point and not 3D based dose calculation. So what happens is that dose is just calculated in a phantom. So this consists of a phantom which basically would be water equivalent. And therefore, it does not take into consideration any inhomogeneities in the patient. No patient information is taken into account when the calculation is done, and you cannot verify any specific treatment factors as well. So because the data or the data directly from the treatment planning system or database of the record and verify system. The data does not provide a check of the correct file transfer from the treatment planning system to the treatment delivery console, nor does it verify any kind of MLC performance or IMRT deliveries. So it cannot be used as an alternative method to replace actual IMRT measurements. So the data comes directly from the TPS or the record and verify system. Therefore, it fails to actually identify any kind of file corruption when you actually move the file from the treatment planning system to the treatment delivery console. So one thing in the report that they stressed quite highly was the importance of independence of the dose and MU verification software. So preferably, the report suggested that the software should be completely independent. It should ideally be a commercial software or an in-house developed software. And when we look at the differences between commercial versus in-house developed software, there are pros and cons of choosing to use either one. And to avoid introducing systematic errors in both systems, that is systematic errors, whether it's in your treatment planning system or your secondary dose verification software, they do recommend to use 2 different sets of experimentally determined beam data. So you shouldn't be using the same set of commissioning data. So this would include, whether it's your PDDs, profiles, or output factor measurements. You shouldn't be using the same set of data for both your treatment planning system beam model as well as the beam model that will need to be created for the secondary dose calculation program. So this also, by using two separate sets of beam data, it would allow you to, allow for the secondary dose calculation program to actually weed out any kind of beam modeling issues that you may have had with your original TPS. And the other thing that was stressed was that the independent secondary dose MU verification system should be able to calculate the MU required for the delivery of the prescribed dose, or it should be able to confirm the resultant dose from a given MU value. So either it should be able to calculate MU from the dose prescribed, or the other way around, that is, if you give a certain MU value, it should be able to calculate the dose to the patient based on the MU applied. So other things that that has to be taken into considerations are things like the patient geometry. For example, the entry point of the beam, the SSD, the depth, as well as the heterogeneity, because all these will have a large effect on the dose per MU. So the secondary dose MU verification should be able to perform the calculation based on the DICOM planning CT data received from the TPS. So because DVH matrices have been shown to be more sensitive to critical dose errors than just looking at a single point dose verification or gamma passing rate, ideally the software, the independent verification software, should also be able to provide DVH curves of the targets and organs at risks. So DoseCHEck, which is part of the SunCheck patient platform, uses an independent algorithm to make sure that you are getting an independent QA check of your patient plan. So all 3D plans, including Electron plans, as well as IMRT, VMAT, SRS, whether it's MLC or cone-based, SBRT, tomotherapy, RadExact, as well as HDR brachytherapy plans are supported within the DoseCHECK platform. So within Sun Nuclear, we have a special team called Sun Deploys, who are responsible for creating a beam model for your clinic, as well as verifying that it matches your measurements, and the measurements are all within a certain tolerance. So to perform a secondary dose verification of your patient's plan in SunCheck, all that a physicist has to do is to export the DICOM plan as well as the patient planning CT, and all the calculations are then completed in the background. So all major TPS systems are supported as long as they can do a DICOM export of the patient plan. The physicist then can simply review the calculated results, as well as we do give you the option to print a PDF report of the results themselves. So in SunCheck, you do also have the option to set up an email notification in the event of a QA failure. So the system will send the physicist an email notifying that there has been a failure in the QA if the results of the QA does show that. So within DoseCHECK, which we will have a look at shortly, you have the option to not only look at beam MUs and point dose calculations, but you are presented with more meaningful dose information, which includes 3D dose, complete 3D dose recalculation on the patient CT. You can have a look at the plan's DVH, the clinical goals as well that has been set by the doctor, as well as the MUs and point doses that have been calculated.
He said the SunCheck approved the...
So the TG219 report states that an alternative method for performing secondary dose verification is to recalculate your plan in another TPS system separate from your clinical TPS. So we all know how much TPSs cost, so this is a rather expensive way of going about performing verification of your patient plan. Now, a more cost-effective option would be to use a secondary MU dose calculation program that uses an advanced 3D dose calculation algorithm, similar to a convolution or superposition algorithm. And this program should be able to perform an independent dose calculation based on the patient's CT data set and provide analysis which includes DVH information. So very similar to using a secondary treatment planning system. So the dose calculator in DoseCHECK uses the collapsed cone superposition algorithm, which was developed at Johns Hopkins University. And details on how this dose calculation algorithm works is provided in the white paper, which is available in the handout section on your GoToWebinar window.
Then they'll make like a ticket.
So looking at a couple of publications out there on the dose calculator within SunCheck. So a paper was published in 2017 by a group of clinical physicists from Moffitt Cancer Center in Florida, where they actually attempted to validate the accuracy of the SunNuclear dose calculator for DoseCHECK as well as per fraction. So 6 MV, 10 FFF, and 15 MV energies were analyzed using a set of IMRT and VMAT plans based on the AAPM practice guideline 5A. So the DoseCHECK and per fraction 3D dose were compared with the ion chamber measurements, and the as well as the ARC-Check diode array, as well as Pinnacle, the 3D dose from the Pinnacle treatment planning system, as well as our own 3DVH dose algorithm. So the results indicated that the SunNuclear dose calculator performed at the accuracy level equivalent to a primary TPS, even on rather challenging cases like head and neck as well as lung cases. So results of this study is available on the white paper, which is the handout that was provided. And I'm also going to be giving you a link to this, link to the paper in the chat window. So look out for that shortly.
I think it probably needs to be repaired.
So there was another paper that was presented at ESTRO 2021 last year. So the purpose of this particular paper was to perform an independent dosimetric check of Eclipse HyperArc SRS plans by using 3 different softwares, and they intended to perform patient-specific QA using this method. So when they looked at the results, they saw that both DoseCHECK and Primo agreed well with the Eclipse HyperArc calculations for a true beam. And there was actually no need for the user to fine-tune the calculation parameters. However, the Mobius 3D default model would actually needed a little bit of tuning to match the HyperArc dose distributions. So this particular paper was actually published in, abstract was published in the AAPN 2022 meeting. So what they did was they compared, the SunNuclear 3D dose calculations to AAA and Accurus. And what they found was that the plans calculated with Accurus demonstrated better agreement with DoseCHECK, with an average percentage, PTV mean dose, max dose, and isocentered dose were all, were about, less than 1%, respectively. So the average gamma pass rate also improved, it was almost 99.5%, which was very good. So the pass rates with the AAA were 91%, which was expected because Acuros is a more superior calculation algorithm compared to AAA. So it's good that we matched much better to Acuros rather than AAA. So in addition to be able, in addition to performing independent photon and electron secondary dose calculations in DoseCHECK, you would also be able to do secondary dose calculations of your HDR brachytherapy plans. So the algorithm used for calculation is based on TG43, and we do provide a complete 3D dose analysis, as well as in addition to providing you point dose verifications as well. So currently all plans from Bravo's Brachyvision as well as OnCentra treatment planning systems are supported. We are working on expanding this to support other HDR planning systems as well. So let me just jump on to my software right now, to SunCheck, to show you what DoseCHECK actually looks like. Okay, so this is the DoseCHECK, the SunCheck dashboard. So as you can see here on the left, we have the patient work list, and on the right, we have the machine work list. So the software itself can be accessed using, any web browser that you may have. So here I have actually accessed it using Chrome. So as long as you've got a network connection or an internet connection, you can actually access the software from anywhere within your hospital network or even from at home. So looking at the patient work list, you can see that you're able to actually filter the patients either by name, face. If you're interested in patients that are just due for DoseCHECK or secondary dose calculation, you can select that. You can filter by different treatment sites. You can filter by different machines, so depending on which machine the patient was treated on. So for example, if you're just looking at HDR plans, you can filter using that as well as you do also have the option to actually look at maybe you just want to review the plans that actually failed, so you can filter by event status as well. So these icons here on the left-hand side give you a sort of an indication, whether the QA for that particular patient has actually passed or failed, as well as at which QA phase the plan actually passed or failed. So on the right here, you have got the machine work list. So as I mentioned before, SunCheck is also a platform for machine QA. So you do have different templates available, either daily, monthly, as well as annual QA. And you can see which of these QAs are actually overdue, which need to be, which are pending review by the senior physicist, and which have actually been approved. The QA results have actually been approved by the physicist. So if we have a closer look at the patient QA dashboard, you can see that, you have the patients as well as the plans associated with the patient. And you can also quickly review to see at which point of the QA process the patient actually is at. So for example, if we look at Mr. Rivers Logan here, you can see that he had some issues with his plan check phase. Then you have all his secondary dose calculation actually passed very well. Fraction 0 is what we refer to as pre-treatment QA within SunCheck. That passed as well. And then we've got in vivo monitoring, which is actually monitoring of the patient while the patient is on the treatment couch. So if we were to open up one of these patients, we can sort of follow the journey of the patient from the very beginning of the QA phase to the very end when the patient has completed treatment. So starting off with the plan check phase, so the plan check phase is actually a quick check of the quick way of checking to see if the plan that's been actually created for the patient actually meets the prescription dose of the which the doctor has actually prescribed, as well as whether it meets the tolerance doses that the doctor has requested for. So here you can see the doses to the patient's PTV, the organs at risks, and so on. And you can also see very quickly using this traffic light kind of systems where within the tolerance bars the doses actually fall. And you're also able to look at the DVHs of the plan themselves. And for physicists, you're able to automate the physics checks for these plans. So whether it's any parameters that are related to the plan themselves, as well as any deliverability checks of the plan on the Linux. So you've got several checks that can be automatically checked within the plan check phase. So moving on to the dose check phase, which is what we are here for today. So in the dose check phase, which is our secondary dose verification module, first of all, you can see that you have the option to calculate dose using points of interest that you would have sent over from your treatment planning system. So all you have to do here is to do a DICOM push of the plan into SunCheck, and SunCheck will automatically calculate the plan within the DoseCHECK module. So here you have an overall view of whether the DoseCHECK phase has actually passed. So if you see a tick mark here, you can see that all the points, targets, OARs, and overall gammas have passed the secondary dose calculation phase. So here you can see that you've got all the point doses. So we're able to export point doses for each beam, composite point doses for each beam, as well as beam point doses, so point doses on a beam by beam basis. So here you can see that you have the dose calculated as well as the MUs calculated. So you see the difference between the plan and the calculated MUs, and the dose between the plan and calculated as well. So you can export as many point doses from your treatment planning systems. We don't restrict you on the number of point doses that can be exported. So looking down further, you can see that we do also give you the option to look at a complete 3D dose calculation of the patient's plan on the planning CT of the patient. So as we move on to more advanced and complicated treatment techniques like RMRT and VMAT, point dose calculations alone are not sufficient. So IMRT and VMAT have a higher potential for errors than conventional 3D planning. So here you can see that we have calculated the dose in the patient independently using our collapse cone superposition algorithm. And you have the option to look at the planned dose. So this would be the dose that has been planned on the treatment planning system itself. And if there are any differences between these two calculation methods, it would show up in this gamma difference map here. So additionally, you do also have the option to review a gamma map of the patient's targets as well as OAR. So here you can see for the targets, we report the mean as well as the D90 and D95 doses. And for the OARs, we do provide the mean and max doses as well. So you're able to see the difference between the TPS calculated as well as the dose calculated within the DoseCHECK platform. So here we also reported overall gamma for the entire plan. So here you can see that 99.91% of the points have actually passed. And we also give you the option to look at the DVHs. So you can see the DVH calculated within DoseCHECK, which would be this dotted line here, versus the reference DVH would be the solid line over here. So several ways of reviewing your plan within DoseCHECK. So you've got the point doses, you have got the gamma analysis for your targets and OARs, you have got your DVHs, as well as a complete 3D dose calculation of the patient's plan on the patient's planning CT itself. So if we were to have a closer look, in addition to using DoseCHECK for photon plan checks, you do also have the option to perform, a DoseCHECK calculation on electron plans. So for electron plans, you have the option to either do a manual entry of the electron plan, or you can send over the DICOM plan of the electron plan, and DoseCHECK would be able to do an independent dose calculation using a pencil beam algorithm. So here you can see that this is actually for this patient, Celeb Grover. This is a manual entry of this patient's electron plan. So here on the electron plan, you can see that you have the option to add beams. So if you're doing it manually, you would have to, put in a beam ID here. So for example, let's say I want to call this number 4. I can give it a name. So the name of the beam. I can select the energy that I want to treat with. I can put in the prescribed isodose line. So for example, let's say I want to prescribe to the 95% isodose line. And then I can put in the planned dose, how much I want to deliver, and then the planned MU. So the planned MU, let's say I plan to deliver about 200 MUs. And the SSD, so what would be my treatment SSD? And then I can select the cone size. So what cone do I want to use to treat this particular patient? So whether it's, a 10 by 6, 10 by 10, 15 by 15, or 20 by 20, these are all created when you actually create the machine within the SunCheck platform. So once you select the cone size, you can see the other factors like the cone factor, cutout factor, and inverse square factor all automatically populated. Other parameters like your gantry angle, collimator angle, and couch angle are all not used as part of the calculation. So these are just informational, and you can fill this in. It's not a requirement to actually fill it in. So once that's done, you can now, define your cutouts. So you can use, either use any of the standard cutouts that you have actually defined for this particular cone, or you do also have the option to create a custom cutout. So you can create either a rectangular, circular, or even an irregular cutout. So if you want to create an irregular cutout, all you have to do is to actually draw on this particular cutout. So let me see here. So let me create a rectangular cutout first. Okay, so this gives you the option to create a rectangular cutout, as well as, it should give you the option to create a custom cutout as well. So let me try that again. So for some reason, it's not allowing me to draw on my screen here. So it was working earlier, but you should be able to draw out any shape that you wish using this irregular cutout option. So that's how you would actually create a custom cutout and create a manual entry of an electron beam. So once you do that, you can either define the prescription target to be at depth or at isodose line. So as I mentioned before, if it is at isodose line, then you would have to define the prescribed isodose line. And if it has depth, you have to prescribe the depth to where you would treat. So the other options you have available within the Electron DoseCHECK module is that you have the option to either view the calculation in either MUs or dose. And once you create a custom cutout, you can actually apply the same custom cutout to multiple beams. So once you do that, the next thing to do would be to actually save the plan. So you can save it. And then you would see that you have the calculation performed. So in this case, the MU difference is out by almost 10%. So I wasn't very good at estimating the MUs for this particular beam. So for the other beams, you can see that the differences that are being reported here, the plan versus the calculated MUs. So if you switch to dose, you would see the difference between the plan and calculated dose. So that is, how you would create a manual entry for your electron beams for secondary dose verification. You do also have the option to actually send over a complete DICOM plan of the electron plan for a particular patient. So here you can see for this particular patient, you can see that you do also have the same options as the manual entry. You can select either the prescription target to be prescription to be defined using the isodose line or the depth, and whether you want to see the MUs or the doses. So here you can see that you've got all the different beams for the electron plan sent over from the treatment planning system. Here we've got 4 beams actually. And all these parameters here are automatically populated from the DICOM plan itself. So except maybe the prescription isodose line, you may need to populate that. And the prescribed depth is actually, pulled over from the table that you see here, the PDD table that you see here, as well as the graph here. So all this has been pre-defined when you actually create the cones within the SunCheck machine module. So here you can see that once the plan has been sent over, the dose is automatically calculated. So for this particular beam, you can see that there's a difference of percent difference in MUs, about 0.89% between the plan and the calculated MUs. So here, in terms of the cutout, you can see that it's been grayed out, and it shows that it's DICOM. So this means that the cutout has actually been sent over via a DICOM plan. So that's DoseCHECK for electron plan dose verification. So as I mentioned before, we do also support HDR plans as well. So secondary dose checks of HDR plans. So for that, let me just jump over to this other patient here. So this particular patient is a has a vaginal cylinder. So for this patient, you can see that once the HDR plan has been sent over to the DoseCHECK, all the point doses that have been defined in the plan have been calculated, and the planned dose versus the calculated dose has been reported here. And if we scroll further down, you can see that you can actually switch between different activities for the different fractions. So whether you want to see the planned Ackermann strength, or whether you want to see the millicurie or the gigabecquerel of the source activity, you can switch between different units for the different fractions. So under each fraction, you can see that you have the option to see the different channels for that particular fraction. So in this case, you only have one channel, so you only see one channel delivering all the dose. But if you do have multiple channels, this pie chart here will tell you, what percentage of the dose is being delivered for each and every channel. So you do also have the option to add additional fractions. So if you have additional fractions that you want to deliver for this particular fraction, you can also do that by clicking on this Add Delivery button here. And if you have if you are a variant user, if you've got a treatment HDR planning system for variant, you also have the option to actually scale the dose in the DVH display, as well as the CT dose display. So here you can see we have actually calculated the dose within the patient's CT. And if you don't have CT, that's not an issue. So if you're going to be planning using ultrasound or MR, you can also see those structures on the screen. But without the CT information. So anything that has been planned without a CT, you can still send the structures over and you can still see the dose being calculated versus what has been planned within the treatment planning system, and see the gamma difference in the doses if there is any difference there. So you do also have the option to review the DVHs. So here you can see the DVHs of the structures that we just saw here in the in the patient CT, as well as the gamma map of the various targets as well as OARs. So this is DoseCHECK for HDR planning. Very simple, very nice to use. So let me just jump back to my slides here. I just have a few other things to cover before I actually add my webinar. So TG219 actually states that independent dose MU calculation can only be part of a more comprehensive QA program for IMRT in a department because of the limitations of secondary dose and MU software. So such secondary dose MU software, have certain limitations. So they cannot detect errors in dose calibration. They cannot detect MLC errors. They can't, detect collimator or gantry discrepancies, and most definitely they can't detect any kind of patient setup inaccuracies. So we do also have an additional module within SunCheck called per fraction, which will allow you to extend your traditional QA program to provide a more comprehensive check of your patient plan, whether it is before or during actual patient treatment. So both DoseCHECK as well as per fraction use the same analysis options and matrices for consistent evaluation across the treatment course of the patient. And you do have the option to compare both measurement versus calculation-based methods, as well as, you do also have the option to either use an array. So if you want to use a measurement array, or EPIDs or log files for additional QA, you are able to do so within the SunCheck platform. So Within the per fraction module, we have a couple of options available. So you can either do a log file based pre-treatment QA method as well as in vivo dose monitoring of the patient, as well as perform a complete 3D secondary dose calculation. And this is a fully automated method. It is very simple to implement. We do also give you the option to calculate dose on the CBCT of your patient for in vivo QA. And in the event that eventually, if you choose to go into EPID-based pre-treatment QA or dose monitoring, we do give you that option as well to upgrade. So with the per fraction measurement package, you're able to do both EPID and log file based QA. And this is also a fully automated option. We do give you the option to calculate a 2D absolute dose for pre-treatment QA. You're able to see a 2D transit dosimetry for in vivo QA, as well as we do also give you the ability to do CBCT 3D dose recalc for in vivo QA. So using this particular method, you're actually able to independently verify MLC position, as well as monitor any kind of patient changes that may occur during the patient's treatment. So this provides a good way of extending your QA method. In addition to just doing simple 3D secondary dose verification, you're actually able to do a complete measurement-based QA. So whether it's using log files or whether it's using EPID, your EPID imager, and we do also give you the option to use SunCheck. So if you still want to do QA using a 3D array for IMR pre-treatment IMRT QA, that is also integrated within the SunCheck platform. So if you would like to learn more about DoseCHECK or per fraction or any of the other products that I spoke about today, we did go through quite a bit today on the SunCheck platform. Please don't hesitate to contact us after this presentation. So now I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. Feel free to actually type in the questions into the chat window, and I will answer them as I receive them. So meanwhile, I'm going to be pasting that link to that paper that I mentioned in the chat window. Okay, so I've just provided you a link to the paper that I was discussing, the paper that compared the dose calculation engine within SunCheck with the ion chambers, the SunCheck, as well as Pinnacle's algorithm as well. So yeah, I don't see anyone asking any questions. So if you do think of anything later on, please feel free to send me an email. I would be happy to answer them as I go along. So thank you for, before I leave, I would just like to thank you again for taking the time today to, attend our webinar. And I hope you have a good rest of the day, and we hope to see you again at another Sun Nuclear event. Thank you. Bye-bye.